Who are you becoming? In this video, we're going to talk through a very simple but unbelievably effective process to help you to become, so that a year from now you look back and say, wow, people around you, people that work with you, people in your company, people in your family look at you and say, wow, that person has become much more than they were. And we're going to take lessons from two things. Ben Franklin, about 300 years ago, and a building in Rome almost 2,000 years ago. The building in Rome is called the Pantheon. It's in the Guinness Book of World Records. It was built in the 70s. Now it's funny because if I met a realtor in your town and I said, I'm going to look at some houses, and they said, this one's a little bit old, they might say it was built in the 70s as well. Well, this building was built in the 70s with no numbers before it. The Pantheon. It's the largest concrete, non-reinforced dome structure in the world. You walk into this building and you look up, there's a hole in the top. It's called the oculus. It's 30 feet in diameter, this hole. So when it rains, it comes right into the building. But you walk in and you're amazed immediately at the vastness of this building. You look up, it's almost 150 feet from the floor to where that oculus sits. And you could fit about a half of a football field inside of this building. No reinforcements in the middle. So what holds it up? What holds it up? And you might say the design, you might say the architecture, you might say the foundation. Well, one of the biggest keys to holding that Pantheon up for 2,000 years, almost 2,000 years, is that within the walls there are 8 barrel vaults. 8 barrel vaults. They're very, very dense pillars, about 21 feet thick. The densest stone, the densest concrete. And these 8 pillars are built into the walls and around the outside of this ring, 142 feet in diameter at the base. Those pillars, those 8 pillars, keep that thing standing for almost 2,000 years. Well, that's great. What does that have to do with Ben Franklin? Ben Franklin, just about 300 years ago, in his early 20s, 20, 21, 22 years old, he writes out his plan for virtuous living. He comes up with 12 pillars. He says, I'll build my life around these traits. And then he spoke with a friend about it, and his friend said, Ben, he said, a lot of people would consider you to be a little bit prideful, a little bit arrogant, pompous, obnoxious. He said, Ben, you might want to add humility to your virtues, to your list. And Ben Franklin wrote in his autobiography, he said, after my friend had presented several cases of examples of people that I knew, that I worked with, that considered me prideful, I realized maybe I should add that, humility. So his plan became his 13-week plan, famous Ben Franklin's 13-week plan for virtuous living. Number 13 is humility. And here's how Franklin's plan worked, and here's how it works with the Pantheon. Ben Franklin said, I will build these 13 virtues. And he created for himself a very simple score sheet. Every single week he would obsess around one virtue. Go in order, 1 through 13. Humility, for example. Frugality, for example. Temperance. And stay on that virtue for the whole week, scoring himself every single day, reflecting on the life. Socrates over 2,000 years ago said the unexamined life is not worth living. So many of us, and I know you've probably experienced it if you're in a leadership role, you get a resume, look at the resume, 10 years, 12 years, 15 years experience. You read the resume and you realize they don't have 15 years experience, they have the same year repeated 15 times. And Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living. So many of us repeat, and that's why that question of who am I becoming, a year from now we're the same person, nothing's changed. But this Franklin plan, and I want to give you a very simple tool to use that to build your pillars, to hold up your Pantheon, to hold up your leadership, to hold up your business, to hold up your family, your community, your public service, whatever it is, your coaching role, your teaching role. Build your pillars. It may not be 8, it may be 5, it may be 3, it may be 12, it may be 20. I don't know. I mean, John Maxwell talks about 21 laws. Stephen Covey says 7 habits, and then he makes an 8th. Jack Welch talks about 5 core leadership capacities. Target and their distribution centers, they're world class, and they use 9 leadership dimensions. They overlap to a degree, these different 21, 9, 7, 5, but not all of them. So what I'd encourage you to do is you start with a small group. And in this video series, we're going to challenge you to build that group and build that focus. So what Franklin did is he created 13. I do not recommend starting with 13. Start with a few. Start with 2, 3, 5 at the most. And repeat. Week 1, week 2, week 3, if you come up with 3 only, and then repeat. Repeat week 1 again in the 4th week. We're going to do that in this video series. And I'm going to give you a tool, and many, many tools actually, to help you so that a year from now you look back and say, you know what? I've built that pillar. You know, maybe